Costin here with a campaign as Drazoath the Ashen to show you the path to ultimate dominance over here in the Battlelands. Research-wise, you want to start getting Overseer Organization and Veteran Convoy Masters. In terms of battles, you want to win the first 2 battles and minimize your casualties, ideally by letting the goblins being, well, goblins, and letting them soak that damage, and then you start getting the settlement to tier 2, using cell labor to start getting the settlement to a higher level, and also you can use the Dreadquake Mortar as well as several declarations of war in order to get things done. You can also declare war on the Cross Clubs. Don't declare war on anyone else because it is not a great idea. Get Inspiring Presence, get Root Marcher, all that kind of jazz, not really an issue. That is one of the first things you want to do on turn 1. Now, you also will probably want, if you're wise about it, you'll probably also want to get another Lord right here. Which one does not strictly matter. Considered is always a good choice, but so is Bloodgreed. Regardless, however, of which one you are going to get, what is a bit important for you to do here is to move Drazoath a bit west. Just a bit west, and same with the Lord right here, because what our goal is in this campaign right here is we want to beat Tretch to the Moonhowlers, or we want to ensure that we arrive roughly at the same time that he does. And that is the key, if you will, to our victory here, because Tretch is going to defeat the Moonhowlers, the greenskins that he starts at war in the Desolation and Asgore. But we kind of want to race him for it. And the way we do that is we move faster than he does. Like, if we look at the campaign map, and I'm just literally using Toggle Fog of War, Tretch just took Mount Silverspear. That's where he is right now. That is not where he's going to remain for the foreseeable future. But you do have a choice in terms of how you approach this. And that choice really defines everything in this campaign. Like, my perspective on the subject is pretty clear-cut. You want to make sure you get there first. That is not really a discussion, and nothing else in this campaign really matters compared to that situation. Make sure you're rushing for things. Make sure you're using all your slaves. Now, the reason you want to eliminate Tretch, very clearly here, is because if you don't eliminate Tretch, you're going to end up spending the rest of your campaign dealing with him. And he is the kind of bastard that will always slip through the cracks. So we deal with the Skaven, so we don't deal with them later, regardless of the cost. Chaos Dwarf campaigns are defined by this. By your ability to make the correct decisions and the critical ones very quickly. Zaytan and Astragoth have a more clear path in their campaigns, but Drazoath, with his focus on industry, his focus on armaments, his skill line, his magical skill line, but also the vast expanse of territory that he's defending in his initial province, is more vulnerable to things. That is, by the way, the reason we do not get to deal with some other things as well in this campaign. Now, it is turn 3. So what that means is Tretch may end up beating us to it, but even if he does beat us to it, we have some options. Sometimes he will get it on turn 4, sometimes he will not. Regardless, your goal is to ensure that you attack him in Mount Greyhag. You can sell the Dreadquake if you want to, though it might not necessarily be advised that you do so, because it can be damn useful against the little vermin that we have to deal with, our little rodent problem, so to speak. So now let's take a look yonder. So we have Tretch, he's just taken damage. We've arrived perfectly in time to, well, complicate his life. The reason you might not want to sell the Dreadquake is dependent on the kind of things you're dealing with. It might prove itself very useful for certain things. We get another Concerned. right there. And I'm not sure if... no, we do not have enough movement range to get to them, unfortunately, right there. So we're just going to sell the Dreadquake. One can do this on turn 1. That's not really the issue. Now, we have a lot of Skaven, but how do we beat said Skaven? Well, we have enough movement range for several battles. We beat the Skaven by out-Skavening them. And that is not, by the way, a joke. That is literally the way you do it. Or we could just auto-resolve and call a decisive fucking victory. That is the thing. This is the thing. This is, by the way, on Legendary. Sometimes this won't be available, however. You can tip the scales in your favor if you do certain very Skaven ways. And let me just show you what I mean by that. Secondary Lord is going to be really important because the movement range that you have, and this is one strategy a lot of people who play Cast Dwarves actually use. I forgot what the actual range was on the Dreadquake. That's the reason I I didn't sell it on turn 1, though I could have. Why not deal with Darkland Orcs? Because fucking Tretch is Tretch. Besides, they won't be so much of a problem. He has 4 Menace from Below as well. So here's what we do. Menace from Below is a pain to deal with. We could possibly win this battle, but I'm not looking necessarily to win this battle. I'm looking to beat the crap out of Tretch. And that is a very different proposition than just winning a battle. Beating Tretch requires careful consideration of the situation that you're dealing with. It means getting in this battle, like whatever you do with the first 2 battles is relevant. What matters is that you show up in this battle with the Katai at full strength. The reason we want to ideally auto-resolve this is for one simple reason. The freaking Doom Wheel will eat our lunch if we let it. So we gotta be very careful. That's also the reason a second Lord is so important, because a second Lord can soak up all of this damage and we can still keep going. Now, by doing that kind of damage and by using Drazoath spells, even if we end up getting routed right here, we're still gonna be in a prime position to potentially auto-resolve it if we do significant enough damage. That's all it really boils down to, gentlemen. You do enough damage in this battle, you can show up and win the second one with auto-resolve with minimal casualties, or you can just straight up win it. Fighting Skaven is always about understanding the specific balance in a campaign. Doesn't matter which race you are. You can be the best race, you can be Cast Warriors. Skaven always have this sheer number of units that makes them so annoyingly brutal to deal with. And there's our Doom Wheel. And there it comes. That leadership that the Cast Dwarves have is actually working against me in this situation, but it doesn't matter. There we go. It says close defeat, but again, it's not relevant. We did enough damage. We can go again and again and again. And once you've dealt with Tretch, the path to victory is clear. Like, if your army is in a decent enough position, and I managed to somehow avoid cataclysmic damage, everything else will come in order. You might lose some Cast Dwarves, doesn't matter. I would definitely recommend finding the army outside of the settlement, because that will actually give you more labor, and also getting a tier 2 tower. Influence is a nice, sweet benefit. Meanwhile, over here, we got other things to deal with. We still have those Darkland Greenskins to deal with, and that is precisely what we're going to deal with right here. We're going to use some laborers and some hobgoblins right here. That's not really going to be too big of a problem. We also use some influence to get that going. Or I keep the hobgoblins right there on the main settlement. The reason we want to go down this path, though, and ignore the Darkland orcs is because we avoid having to fight Imric in this kind of situation. There are things you could deal with. You could get, of course, you know, certain other things right here. Although I think I'm going to wait with the division of labor right there. We don't have enough money to sort everything that we want to out, so we can take a look at diplomacy and all that kind of stuff. And we have a lot of... actually, I declared war on Miao Ying. Well, okay, that's a thing that apparently... Like, I thought it was Jade, the Imperial Wardens, but I was wrong on that. So we deal with Tretch in this situation. It doesn't matter what your army is. Like, the only army that actually has any value whatsoever is that Doom Wheel and Stormverm, and it's really mostly the Doom Wheel. The reason the Doom Wheel is the problem is because it has the mass incapability to really walk over you. You do not want to wait for Tretch to get power. No one wants to wait for Skaven to get power. What you do after this point is your own decision, but my personal recommendation is to go for Mount Silver Spear. Because at this point, you're really in a strong and dominant enough position that you can do kind of like whatever you want. Just make sure you get Gordouz, make sure you go here. And yeah, fight this battle, win this battle. Easy win, easy pickings, easy life. And then what? That is the question you'll ask. What do we do then? Well, you have choices. You do actually have choices. You could ignore the Darkland orcs completely for a while and deal with Skarsnik. And by dealing with Skarsnik, who also hates you, you can make a deal with Forgrim. Or you can let them fight out and go for the Tower of Gorgoth. Or you can deal with Imric. Decisions, decisions, decisions. From my view, the Tower of Gorgoth is certainly useful, but it's beneficial to go for Skarsnik. Largely because of the kind of benefits you have. However, bear in mind Grimgor. And Grimgor is a patient beast that will not stop. So it might just be best to deal with the Darkhold and then go deal with maybe Imric. You don't need his territory. This is the thing. Chaos Dwarves have every climate in the game available. But first let's deal with Tretch, and I'll show you how to handle. Alright, several turns later, and I did suffer a greenskin attack on the Sentinels. It is still legendary. I'm checking, because there are some bad tendencies you develop when you play 4,000 hours. You might as well double check things. But yeah, effectively the campaign is won. Now, here's the things I've done in the meantime. I've gotten Overseer Organization. I've gotten Veteran Convoy Mastery. Now I'm going to start going for Fierce Leader, for Lord Recruit Rank and Hero Recruit Rank, as well as Demonsmith Sorcerer Capacity. Meanwhile, over here, I've set up a factory. I'm getting armaments. You don't want to go too hard on armaments because you don't need too many of them early on. So you want to get materials more than you do armaments. And this is going to bring up one of those crude, broken things about the Chaos Dwarves. I would be remiss if I didn't mention it, because it is something worth mentioning. Because it is stupid, but it is worth doing. And that is, you can occupy or sack a settlement, but you can also raise it for an enormous amount of raw materials. So thus the entire slave economy is invalidated by the fact that you can just simply do this over and over again and again and again. So Chaos Dwarves, their entire complex system that Creative Assembly built, ends up being neutered by the simple fact that we do not care about it. As long as we have raw materials over here to keep us going, we can do things, lots of things, enormous things in a campaign. And that is part of the problem that we have here when we're talking about playing Chaos Dwarves. Because we can always invalidate things. Now, what would I do in this campaign? I would just go start getting Imric, go show up with multiple forces against him, arrayed against him. If I need money, there's plenty available. There's a caravan I even sent. The first caravan you want to send should always get raw materials, but again, any source of raw materials is invalidated by the fact that you can recruit lords with no military supply lines, and you can then use said lords, like you can have a second lord. One lord raises the settlement, the other occupies it. You get tons of money in the process. So money ends up being really an irrelevancy in a lot of different ways in a Chaos Dwarf campaign as a result of that specific situation. And I know, it is silly, it is nonsensical. What would I do after this point? Well, here's what I am doing. I'm going to save armaments for artillery. And then we're going to also, or I'm already building artillery. I would get a Tarok. Right there, Bull Center Tarok. I would go to war with either the Thunder Gods if I want an easier fight, or Imric. Once I've dealt with Imric, I sell those elements to Tretch, to Queeks. Forget Tretch. Tretch is not reliable. Queek, however, is a powerhouse, and he can be trusted. And a very important thing to mention here. It might be tempting to play a campaign where you go to war against everyone, but sometimes you need one good, reliable ally. It's a bit weird that Queek has only achieved so little. Generally speaking, he achieves much. Imric being very passive is just Imric things. Bit surprised, I admit, by Queek. I would have expected Karakazul to be a smoking pile, but he'll get there. Queek always gets shit done. There's no campaign on Legendary that I've played where Queek did not wipe out Karakazul, or it's very, very rare for it to not happen. So some important details, some important facts. Bear in mind, you deal with Imric, you sell the territory to Queek, or you go against Imric into Karakazul, sell that to Queek, get a powerful ally, dominate the world. And then together, you fight Grimgor. If Grimgor is too much of a problem, that is, for you. And keep in mind, with Taurus, Tarok, artillery, even Grimgor must kneel. Then again, it's Grimgor. What do you expect? That is all I had to say. If you guys would like some tips and tricks, or you would like to see me cover any particular campaign, or you have a campaign where you're struggling and want some advice, consider contacting me on the email in the description and the pinned comment below, or just leave a comment on this video. I'll see you next time. And mind you, I wish to emphasize, this is not me abusing Chaos Dwarves to the max. This is me playing a campaign relatively normal. If we want to talk about abuse, I could have 10 fucking lords and I could make them all mages and use unlimited magic against Tretch and win the battle without ever having to fight it. That is the ridiculous nonsense that Chaos Dwarves can do. And I think is one of those aspects that CA should look into. Because I love ridiculous nonsense, we all do. But maybe that's not what Chaos Dwarves should be. I mean, certainly you look at the multiplayer side of things, it ends up being like, we have 20 lords for instant construction and free construction or something like that. It's a bit ridiculous. Costin signing out.